Welcome to Take Notice, Amplifying Black Stories. I'm your host, Allison Preisinger-Heggins. Take Notice, Amplifying Black Stories is a podcast exploring society, culture, and current events through conversation. We aspire to create an open, respectful, and equitable space where guests may feel free to share their truth and lived experiences. Our core values are rooted in community, connection, and personal development. Stories help us learn, relate, and grow. We are here to listen, to take notice. Thank you for being with us. I would like to acknowledge the land on which this episode was created. I would like to show gratitude to the traditional ancestral land of the Coast Salish people, including the Duwamish people past and present. Land acknowledgement statements are an important part of honoring those whose land we now live and work on. We begin each episode this way to help spark ideas and keep these conversations in the front of our minds so that we may continue to be open to doing better. I encourage listeners to research the land on which you live and are listening right now. Recognizing this is just the beginning. Some additional next steps to consider would be to seek out the stories of Native people from our shared history and today. Spend time asking yourself difficult questions and challenging norms that may be linked to colonialism. Engage in your community around topics like land tax, curriculum, hiring practices, decision-making, organizing, and reparations. Seek out media created by Native people. The more you explore, challenge, and learn, the more questions may arise. But this is how we grow and connect. Thank you for joining us for Take Notice, Amplifying Black Stories. We are going to be releasing an episode a week to close out the second season of Take Notice. And we would love to hear your feedback on how the second season has gone. We've changed some things from the first season, and we want to move forward into our third season with your feedback in mind. So in order to do that, you can just go to our website, go to takenoticepodcast.org, and under reviews, you will find a button to leave your own review. So we would love to hear your feedback. And also, if you would like to be a guest in our third season, which will start up in September, you can also visit our website, and there's a form on the website for guests as well. So we'd love to hear you and connect with you to be a part of Take Notice in Season 3. It was a pleasure to speak with this episode's guest, Hadriana Leo. She shares stories about growing up the youngest of several siblings in the tight-knit community of St. Lucia, her relationship with her parents, mental health, and the powerful work that she's doing now with women by bringing emotional intelligence to personal finance. Hadriana Leo is the Money Navigator. As a wealth coach, strategist, and consultant, she is on a mission to inspire, empower, and equip women to unapologetically create wealth. Her unique methodology connects the head and the heart so women can confidently walk their path to lasting wealth and legacy. I really enjoyed this conversation with Hadriana and am very thankful to her for being a part of Take Notice. So thank you for supporting our Take Notice guests, and thank you for being with us. Please enjoy this episode with Hadriana Leo. Hadriana, thanks for joining me for Take Notice. How are you today?
I am doing great. I'm really excited to have this conversation today.
Me as well. Yeah, thanks for joining me. Where are you located? I don't know that I saw that.
I am in a city called Pickering, just outside Toronto in Ontario, Canada. It is, I'm going to say it's a lovely day today, and it's just over freezing. So it gives you some perspective of what my normal has been the last few winter months.
Oh, wow. Yeah. Burr. I bet you're just mostly inside then.
Well, you know what? One of the things, and we may get to this, I'm an immigrant to the country, so I had to be very deliberate in learning to be active and just as engaged in my life through the cold months. So I try not to stay locked up too much. It's not good for the psyche, especially with what's happening in the world around us right now.
Yeah, that makes a lot of sense. Yeah, I'm in the Northwest in Seattle where it's gray a lot of the times. The past couple of days it's been sunny and nice but cold, but people are definitely affected by the gray, even if they can get outside. So yeah, what kinds of things have you learned to do to get outside?
Oh my. Well, for one thing, a few years ago, I joined a group. It's actually other business owners. We were networking together, And then one of them is an activity enthusiast. I'll call her that, because to call her a health enthusiast would not do it justice, because she's so much more about living fully. Let me tell you, Allison, that I joined a walking group. We would show up for each other every Monday morning, come hell or high water or blizzard. And I walked. I walked for a full year every season in the morning with my friends. I learned to dress properly and enjoy that brisk air coming into my body. It was actually quite enjoyable, but it was all about the company. I have to be honest.
Mm.
I've also learned to ice skate.
Oh, wow.
I
Yeah.
actually own a pair of my own ice skates, and I take that with a big chunk of salt. When I say I've learned to ice skate, I can stay standing on the ice and move around at a relatively good pace. No
Mhm.
shenanigans, no hijinks. I am not jumping and landing. No, none of that.
Mm.
And yes, we bought toboggans so we get out on the hills when it's nice and filled with snow. I have my two daughters that help me do that and get me up and out. So, yeah, I've just tried to stay engaged and to keep moving outside. Full confession, I haven't been walking outside these last few months. I've been walking in the gym, which is not the same thing. But
Mm.
I'm
Mhm.
getting out there, Allison. I'm active and
Sure.
I'm moving and I'm keeping my mood up, and it's
Mhm.
really been helpful. That decision has been impactful in helping me keep a steady outlook on life that is mostly positive, deliberately more positive than not.
Mhm. Yeah, that sounds wonderful. Yeah, and to have that group to join up with when you did have that, or when you were doing
Yes,
that anyway, that sounds
yes,
really, really nice. Yeah,
yes. It
and
really
motivating.
was.
Nice. So, where did you grow up and who were you surrounded by growing up?
Oh, I don't want to make our listeners jealous or anything, but I was born in the beautiful and warm island of St. Lucia in the
Ah,
Caribbean.
oh, wow. Yeah.
And I spent my all my formative years. Well, I guess every moment we live is it helps form us and shape us. But I grew up there with my parents, my siblings. I'm the last of eight
Oh,
children.
okay. All right.
And by far, most of my siblings are well older than me. I like to call myself the accident
Oh,
baby. Like, surprise, I'm here.
yeah.
So you can well appreciate that I was very well taken care of. I had my siblings ahead of me, and they were already well competent in taking care of themselves. So I got to tag along on many, many adventures that I probably wouldn't have gotten to be part of if not for them taking me along.
Mm.
Whether they had a choice or not, I don't know, but I
Oh,
don't
sure.
care. I got to go. And
Mhm.
yes, it still is a small community, a small tight knit. If you want to compare it to like small village lives in small pockets of rural, maybe American states,
Mhm.
that's similar, because literally there was my house here. If you walked a minute to the right and then you turned a corner and climbed the hill, there was my grandmother's house, my mother's house, and then a little further, there was my auntie, and everybody knew everybody.
Mm.
Everybody looked out for everybody. If you were short on salt, my house was typically the house where if a person needed a thing that they didn't have, they would come to us. So I grew up with that, giving and looking out for other people, being exemplified around me a lot. And it was just all very tight, which has its pluses and minuses, because
Mhm.
you really couldn't fail quietly. You couldn't win quietly, you couldn't fail quietly, because it
Mm.
was just all happening around you. So I grew up with the beach very close by, in just about any direction I could take a walk and go to the beach. But there were also aspects of living that were a little difficult. I like to explain it this way. I grew up in a society that was very traditional, that was very, I guess, closed and tightly formed. But I was exposed to the Cosby Show and In Living Color and
Mm.
these two experiences were often at odds with each other because that is not how my parents were bringing me up, but I was seeing that example. So you can well imagine my teen years were interesting.
A little bit of conflicting cultures
Yes,
there.
yes.
Yeah.
And the expectations as a young person trying to figure myself out, it was well different. Like, yeah, you're not talking to your mother like that under no circumstances.
Right.
And some conversations were not the conversations you had. There were things that you just didn't talk about. There were experiences that I had that were significant in forming my life, but you don't talk about them. They were just the
Mm,
things that happened to you and you didn't have anything else to say about it. You
mm,
don't share these things.
uh,
But it was just different. And having to resolve that and figure my way around all of that was quite interesting. Overall, Allison, I'll say to you that I lived a marvelous formative years. They were full of adventure, full of excitement, full of opportunities that I think a lot of others may not have had, considering my where I was growing up. And I regret nothing. Says
yeah.
me. I have the scars on my legs to prove it that I've been scarred, but I regret nothing.
Mm. What were some of the adventures that you had the opportunity to go on with your siblings since they were older?
Well, I remember getting into camp. So I grew up as we were very churched. And I'm saying churched because it really is churched. When I was growing up, it wasn't about developing a relationship with that spiritual entity that you subscribe to. That wasn't what it was about. It was about doing this because that's what's expected of you. So I say deliberately that I was well churched.
Mm.
I remember getting to go to camp. The entry age was 16 plus, and I went. I was 15, barely 15, and I got to go because my brother went with me. Also because we were leaders in our community churches. My brother was the pianist, I was the vocalist, and that kind of allowed me to maybe be a little more mature. But I'm fairly certain that my dad would not have let me, as a 15-year-old, take a plane to Barbados by myself with all these other young people who he doesn't know who they are and hope that the people there would look out for me. So my brother went with me. I got to camp in a number of different islands. Every year that they announced camp, I'm like, can I go? Can I go? And as long as I had one of them with me, I was going. I also got to travel because by then my brothers were driving. So let me see if I can explain this. I had two older sisters. They were the first two of my moms. Then I had four brothers and then another sister. So the sister who's closest to me, she was like so boring compared to the things I could do with my brothers. So you can well imagine my brothers were driving and my dad had a vehicle that he was no longer using that turned into our vehicle. They taught me to drive. I was driving at like 12. Don't
Oh,
tell
wow.
anyone.
Right.
I could barely reach the pedals. And we drove everywhere in all sorts of nooks and crannies around the island. We got to perform places. Like I said, as a musical family, one of my brothers was my quasi manager. My other
Mm.
brother played for me. We did concerts and could come home like at 1 o'clock in the morning. It's interesting because I'll share this. I had a curfew of 10 o'clock up until the day before I got married. Like if I was going to be home past 10, I was still required to call and let my parents know. I got
Mm.
married at 22, okay?
Mhm, mhm,
But when I went out with my brothers, oh, I could be out as long as I needed to be because I was with my brothers, right? So
mhm,
it's almost that probably speaks to the double standard with bringing up people male versus bringing them up female and all of that. But I took
mhm,
advantage of it. I could go places with my brothers. So I learned a lot about the world. I got access to a lot of things. I remember my brothers are techies, so we had an old Commodore 64 computer. Now that's an old machine.
Mhm.
But I remember us sitting around and taking turns typing the code.
Oh,
And
yeah.
Allison, you're typing code, and if you make a mistake, the code, just think of what book can I reference? A typical novel size, full of code that you had to type in and save it. But if you put a comma where there was supposed to be a semicolon, it will not run.
Oh, wow.
And it
Yeah.
would run, and it'll stop and it'll say that there was an error. To me, that exposed me to things that nobody else in our neighborhood was doing.
Mm.
Nobody else at that time was exposing women or girls to that. My parents were adamant that I could do whatever I wanted as long as I didn't bring any shame or disrepute to our family. So I was one of the few girls in the neighborhood that could ride a bicycle.
Mm.
I remember riding a bicycle and falling down, and one of the men sitting over to the side said it was good that I fell because I had no business being on a bike.
Oh,
I
wow.
mean,
Mm.
anyways,
Mm.
I had opportunities and I had access. And sitting at a computer, I remember a program from before there was Facebook and all that. It was called Freetel. And I remember sitting at home talking to someone in Australia. And it's like, my
Wow.
world's opening up. My
Mhm.
brothers, we had ham radios, and we had antennas in the backyard, and we would talk to people in back then Czechoslovakia, and we got money from because we would exchange currencies. We would get money like $1,000 bill from Zimbabwe.
Oh,
Like,
wow.
has no value, but
Right.
hey,
Oh, wow.
yeah. I loved everything that I had access to growing up. It shaped how I thought and what I would become now and the work that I do now.
Mm. Yeah, wow. Sounds like an incredible adventure of a childhood, being able to hang out with your brothers all the time.
Yeah, it
Yeah.
really was. And you know what? I sometimes take it for granted, but even sharing it with you now, I'm thinking about even some kids in developed countries didn't have access to some of the things that I did, or the opportunities, or even the support that
Right?
I was given. So I am exceptionally grateful.
Hmm. What did your parents do when you were growing up? Do you remember?
My dad, my dad, well, okay, when I was growing up, my family had attained a certain level of, I wouldn't say wealth necessarily, but they were light years ahead of where they started. So by the time I was in my teens, my mom was now a stay at home mom. She was no longer working. And my dad was a senior engineer at the island's electrical company.
Mm.
So their fortunes had definitely upgraded by the time I was around. But the stories that I get to hear now about their lives before that, it it gives you reason to pause and really stop and say, because of the sacrifices they made, I get to be where I am today. Like, literally,
Mm.
the times when my parents had several jobs, going from one to the next, when my mom had to serve domestically, when she had to wait on white foreigners who were holidaying in the country and
Mm.
be subjected to sometimes humiliating treatment just in order for her to take care of her children. She would share that she would sometimes taking care of the hotel guests. She would run over there, take care of them, leave their food cooking, run home, take care of something at home, and then run back and hope that everything's still together.
Mm.
Or from being up so early in the morning to show up at one job and then have to go over at night to the shipping yard where they were processing green bananas, and then still have to take care of her kids and still have to show up for her parents, because that's a big thing in our, where I come from, in our culture. You
Mm.
don't dispatch your elders, you take care of them and you nurture them, and you support them as they get older.
Mhm.
I'm amazed that they made it, in all honesty, but I appreciate the struggle that they've gone through. I can't say that I get it, because I probably will never get it, but I appreciate what they had to go through to allow myself and my siblings the opportunities that we got.
Yeah. Wow. Yeah, it sounds like they went through a lot before you were even around.
Oh yes. And
Yeah.
it's now as an adult, well, in the last few years, as they're getting older and I'm getting older, that we can really share these things. They
Mm.
didn't talk about it then, but we can talk about it now.
Mhm.
And I'm thankful that for the most part, they were not embittered by it. There was a lot that could have turned them really hard and really bitter and mad at the world and the system and everything.
Right.
I'm thankful that a lot of things that happened they can laugh about now, which I think is a healthy way to process, because they ain't going to no psychiatrist, Allison. They are not stepping into anybody's place to say I need therapy. That's not how we roll.
Mm.
But
Yeah.
it's interesting because I have a therapist, and I remember saying to my mom not very long ago, because I finally went and got one. I says, "Mom, I have a therapist," and I was kind of, humming and hawing, but she
Mm.
actually supported me and was happy that I was able to reach out to someone and get that kind of support. And I said to her, "I really wish that for you as well." And she's like, "I don't know, but at least you could support the decision for me to do that."
Oh, that's good. Yeah. Yeah. What do you think shifted from? Do you think it's just the age, like you're an adult and they're older, so you're able to have these conversations that you couldn't have before? Or do you think something else has shifted?
I think a number of things may have shifted.
Mhm.
I do believe that the way the world views us has changed. And when I say us, those of us, my parents' generation, who had to pull themselves up, as they say, by their bootstraps. I think that perspective has changed. I think my parents' vision of themselves has also adjusted.
Mm.
And I can speak for myself. I don't know about my siblings necessarily, but I know that I've gone out of my way to validate my parents, because I think they needed to hear that. I think it was important for me to share to them that everything they did, I appreciate. Everything they went through, I appreciate that. And over the years, the stories came through, and we were able to speak more. I think part of it too is me being a parent as well, and having conversations with them about the things that I struggle to provide for my children, or the concerns that I have for them. Now it's mostly my mom. My dad is not as much of a talker, unless it's like politics or philosophy,
Mhm.
which is a whole different conversation.
Mhm.
But when we get to talk about our life experiences, it's easier for us to find areas where we relate. Because even if I have all these opportunities, now I live in Canada. My parents still live in St. Lucia. But now that I live here, the fundamental challenges have not changed, right? At the core of being humans, with my mom, at the core of being women, being wives, those fundamentals challenges are still there. And we get to connect that way. Yes, and we get to be a little more open that way. I think those were probably some of the things that have moved a little bit along the years that allow us now to have these conversations.
Yeah, that makes a lot of sense. Hmm.
Mhm.
So what ended up bringing you up to Canada? How did that
Mm.
how did that happen? Were you married when you were still in St. Lucia?
Yeah, I got married at the end of July, and 2 days later, we came up to Canada. I literally
Mm.
honeymooned in Canada. When you come up to Canada, you're usually offered 6 months. So we said, okay, let's see what's here, what's gonna happen. At the time, I was a teacher. I was teaching high school. I was teaching systems analysis, the computer in me. So I was teaching
Oh,
high
nice.
school IT. My husband was and continues to be a construction worker. So we own a renovations company.
Mm, mhm.
So we came up and we took a look around. I took a leave from my teaching and I said, you know what, let's see what happens. So we stayed for 6 months. Then we said, oh, let's extend that. Let's stay for 6 months more. We haven't gone back,
Yeah.
Allison. So we took the steps to regulate or regularize our stay in Canada, and over the next few years, we became full-time residents, business owners, parents. Thankfully, we get to travel freely, and we can go see our family back home and everywhere else. But what brought me here? Remember that. Remember when I said that it's a tight community?
Mm,
I was not I was not molested in any way. I did not run away from any civil unrest or seek political asylum or anything like that. But the truth is, when our communities are so small, there is very little opportunity to become anything outside of how you've been identified, how you have been labeled, or what you've been. You cannot outrun the shadow
yeah.
of who your parents are or what their political views are. And in a community that small, 150 180,000 people across the whole island, 238 square miles, the whole island,
Mhm.
there was an opportunity to really grow
Yeah.
beyond that. And I know for myself, I was seeking more opportunities than what I thought would have been available to me. If I had stayed in St. Lucia, I probably would have become a career teacher because that seemed to be the thing that I was heading to. But I wanted more. I wanted different. I wanted to be able to have an opinion without it impacting my family. I wanted to be able to say I disagree without worrying about who's going to be impacted by that. But I also wanted to explore things outside of the norm. I wanted to do and be, and I wanted to get opportunities on my own merit.
Mm,
Now, I'm articulating all of this now. It was not that well articulated. It was a 22-year-old leaving the
sure.
island. But
Yeah.
looking back on it, I can say that those were the things I was looking for. I wanted my merit to be the reason why I got what I got, and I had access to what I could. And I wanted to step away from the system of who do you know and what can that do for you. And we came to Canada, and we're thrilled. We're thrilled that we did. I have to say, I love the country that I've chosen as our home. And I love everything that we've been able to build and grow while we've been here.
Mm. That's wonderful. Yeah, I can imagine. I just thinking about things as you described that small towns, folks that I've talked to with similar experiences say similar things as far as you just can't
Yeah.
get away from anything that you might have done in the past
Yep.
is not going anywhere.
Yeah, that's
Yeah.
true. And it's just hard to establish your own identity,
Yeah. Hmm.
without having to worry about how will that impact or come back on my family, or
Right.
can like I said, daddy loves to talk about politics and he has strong opinions. I mean, about our precious two parties, political parties in St. Lucia.
Hmm.
And sometimes I disagree.
Hmm.
Sometimes I want to be able to say out loud and to other people that I speak with that I might disagree. But in the communities that we live in, Tutu's, he would know. Like, we don't
Yeah.
need Facebook.
Yeah.
He would know because somebody heard and somebody said and what have you. And
Right.
that might actually impact him, not just within the family, but that might impact him at work. that might impact him when it's time to go after some opportunities. It's
Mm.
in Yeah, it's tight and
Yeah.
it's tricky.
Sounds like it. Yeah. So, did you completely leave behind teaching when you got to Canada, or did you do that at all when you got? What did you shift to when you got up
Yeah,
to Canada?
I looked at the teaching. I looked at teaching here, and I was very, I guess I'll say scared, because in
Mm.
St. Lucia, teachers are revered. Teachers are held in high regard as pillars of community, and that's neither here nor there at this point because I know so much more. But I didn't find teachers being held in such regard here when I came to Canada in 2000, and I wanted to explore that. I was trying to get jobs teaching in colleges or even computer classes and stuff like that. It was different altogether. The respect was just not there.
Mm.
So yeah, I transitioned. First things first, as an immigrant. Forget about everything you knew before. You had to prove that you knew it, even if you
Mm.
had any number of letters behind your name. So, no, I couldn't go back to being a teacher. I started, one of my first gigs was telemarketing, which is
Mm.
interesting. I like to tell people that I learned every swear word in the Canadian
Oh,
lexicon
right.
because I was the one calling to offer you the opportunity to have your ducts cleaned in the middle of dinner. And
Oh, right.
yeah, that was me.
Mm.
But yeah, I started with that because we needed to eat. At the end
Hmm.
of the day, my husband and I needed to eat. I have to throw a caveat in there that we didn't come alone. At the time when we came, my sister and her family lived here. They were working in the consular office, so they had a diplomatic position in Canada. So
Mm.
we came and we stayed with them. So it was not as traumatic a transition as you would have thought, but still, the whole idea of Canadian experience kept us from getting or making as much progress as we wanted to. So yeah, I did telemarketing. I had a gig in a Lebanese bakery one time. I learned the beautiful flavor of mint,
Mm.
fresh mint in just about everything, and it just turns your cuisine around.
Wow.
That was interesting, but the 4 o'clock in the morning starts. That was short lived. I did admin work. I did more admin work. I did some network marketing work, trying to establish myself in my own business. As we got better established and I was able to get access to better positions, I landed in the financial services industry. And am I glad I did? Because I was able to blend what I consider to be two of my best gifts into what I'm doing now and what I see myself doing for the foreseeable future. And that is in the world of financial coaching. So, a long road to get to where I am now. I wouldn't even say long because I'll just be the age I am. That's the age I am. It's just how long it took. But
Mhm.
it was an interesting, winding, definitely not a straight line type of experience.
Yeah, yeah, that makes sense. A lot of hurdles
Yes.
coming into the a new country and things too. So your sister lived up in the area as well. Did you do your other siblings still live in St. Lucia, or did they?
Oi. So all the girls left.
Oh, okay.
So all the girls, I have two siblings in the UK. My sister, she's deceased now. She was in Canada and then she was in New York. So she settled in the US after she left and we stayed in Canada.
Mm.
So my brothers are still in the Caribbean with their families. I look at them and I think cowards. But I think wherever we went, we were able to thrive. And I'm going to throw that back again to what our parents downloaded into us.
Mm.
My dad says, even now, he's like, I'm not worried about my kids. You all have found your feet. You know what you're doing, and you figured out your place in the world. Wherever we are, we figured that part out, but we get to go visit each other, and I'm the only one. I'm the only one in Canada.
Okay. That's wonderful to have that bond with each other. How even though you're so far apart, and then to have your parents be so solid in where you all are at.
Yeah.
That's nice. That's really
Yes, it's
good.
it's good to hear as well because
I imagine,
I
yeah.
think on some level I thought, okay, so I'll say that the choices I made in my life, I was sometimes of the opinion that I disappointed them because I don't know what it's like. Okay, I can learn anything. I'm one of those people, I can be good at anything I want to be. So there was the hope that I would be the doctor and that I would be
Mm.
the high achiever and all of that. And I'm like, I don't wanna. like I'm very good with numbers, but the moment you take it into this existential calculation that has no basis in actual real world application, I'm out. Like, I don't need to know sine, cosine, tangent, or calculus or anything like that. There's no direct application for me. And I couldn't be bothered to learn all of these things. For what? To what end? I checked out of formal education at that point. It was not me. Okay, I think I can say bravely now that area of learning, it did not resonate with me. I had to find an area where I could still work with the numbers. I could still be thrilled by moving things around and analyzing and looking at how things work. And developing strategies. I could still do that, but I could still access the nurturer in me, the side of me that wants to connect with actual humans and not space, and grow that. So yeah, that's that's me. That's kind of where I broke away from academia.
Yeah. Can you describe what you're up to now? I know that you own your own business and all these things. So can you describe
Yes.
that?
Sure, sure. I guess before I quite landed in the financial coaching world, I did the traditional financial advisory. So, the investments, the insurance, and retirement planning, and all of that. And I knew something was missing, but I wasn't quite sure what it was. What I found from my own experience and from the experiences of others that I had the opportunity to work with, to talk to counsel, there was something missing in financial services in the way that it served women. And it's not about throwing another product at us as females. And when I say females, if you show up to the world and the world sees you as female, there's a different way that you're treated. There are different expectations of you in financial services. So I realized that there was that emotional intelligence component that was just missing from conversations about money, and not just about like how much did you spend on groceries or can you balance the checkbook once upon a time, but the fundamental conversations around wealth, legacy, and impact, and how money could be used to do that. Women were just not invited to have these conversations. And from what I've learned, from the research that I've done, from the training that I've attained, it's not that we can't do it. It's that the system has been created in such a way that we are not expected to flourish within it. And we don't have points of relativity where we can relate to the outcomes. And the system's just not created with us in mind. I'm just going to
Mhm.
throw it out that way.
Right.
We needed a way to bring emotional intelligence to the world of personal finance, where we can relate to the outcomes, where the outcomes speak to the things that speak to us. And I thought to myself, yeah, we need to fight the system. And then I'm like, yeah, I don't have the energy for that. I ain't fighting no system. Instead, my work now invites women to learn the rules and create a system that aligns and works with who you are. So instead of trying to turn ourselves into pretzels to fit into a space that wasn't created for us, we learn the rules of the game. We understand what our outcomes need to be. And I help women to take who they are, their best and brightest gifts, and superimpose that onto their financial journey. so that they actually can relate to the outcomes that they want to create. Mega mind blowing, totally changes how we interact with money as women.
Wow. That sounds amazing. How long have you been doing this work?
Well, I started in 2015
Okay.
when I stepped away from the traditional financial advisory career. And whenever this goes to air, you do the math. So
Mhm.
if it's this year, it's my seventh year.
Wow. That's awesome. And can you give an example of a transformation that's happened for a client or
Sure, let me see.
yeah.
Which one do I pull for you? Let's take a look, for example, at a client that I'm working with currently. She is actually making more money than she knows what to do with, which is not a problem a lot of people have. But she knows that she can be doing more with her money. She just doesn't know how to do that. And our conversations center around, first, what do you want? What do you want to achieve? Because she's like, every people are telling her about real estate and cryptocurrency and all of that. And I'm like, okay, hold on just a
Mm,
moment. These are all vehicles that could get you to a certain destination, but what do you want? What is the life you want to create? In having that conversation and understanding the outcomes that she would like, what are the things that are important to her? What does she value in the life that she wants to create? Then we were able to work our way back and say, okay, you know what? You need simplicity. So, whatever strategy we come up with, it needs to be dead simple. It needs to be, for the most part, passive, not something you need to be monitoring all the time. So, you know what? Cryptocurrency is out,
mm.
right? As of this point in her journey. So, we
Mhm.
were able to create a strategy that allowed her to do some research, put some time constraints on that so she doesn't go down a rabbit hole of, but what if, what, and what have you, and
Mhm.
then get to implementation. And her plan is very simple. Her plan simply says, okay, now that I know exactly what I'm needing, she can be proactive, which is what she needs to be, as opposed to what she was being, which was reactive. So she'll
Mm,
go to the accounts like, oh, but I have $3,000 sitting there. What do I do with that? Maybe I'll send it here. Maybe I'll send it there. And she did that like twice or three times every month.
mm,
Now she's going to know, this is what the expectation is. This is what I'm planning for. And she sits at her computer maybe twice a month to do what she already knows is the plan. So very, very different in how she would have had this conversation if she had gone to a traditional advisor who would have probably just said, you know what, save your money, buy these stocks, get these mutual funds, and done. It would not have relieved the true sources of her anxiety, which was in the overwhelm, the complications, and the reactivity that had become her norm.
mm. Wow. Yeah, that seems really great as far as being able to, like you said, the emotional intelligence part of it, being able to
Definitely.
connect with each client in that way. I
Yeah.
imagine that makes every interaction and everybody's plan slightly different.
Quite
Yeah.
different. We may end up using similar tools,
Right.
but the roots of it are different. It's kind of like taking what you want to have or what you want to realize and making it big enough, making it desirable enough that you're now going to work the systems that we put in place to get you there. She
Yeah.
doesn't really care about whether she makes 20% on her portfolio or 10% or even 5%. The things that she care about are the quality of life things, not so much the percentage things.
Hmm.
Rooting her outcomes, rooting her financial journey in the quality of life and the values that are important to her. Now she has no problem talking about, yeah, I need more than 5% on this because that's going to give me the quality of life I want. So it's rooting it first and then creating strategy.
Mm. Wow. That seems like really rewarding work.
I'm thrilled, Allison. You don't know.
That's awesome.
Like, I'll tell you honestly, last night I'm working with a couple. This is their second session. I'm working with them. And when I presented to them, I started and I'm like, okay, what you're going to see might be a little overwhelming, but know that by the end of this call, I have a plan for you. And what I shared with them, they will go from, I have no idea how we're going to overcome this, to debt freedom and home ownership, debt freedom in 6 to 8 months, and home ownership a year after. And it's because I've found their trigger, I've
Mm.
found their challenge, and we're going to strategize.
Oh,
Hell,
wow. Yeah.
right? So rewarding, oh my goodness, you don't even know. Don't tell
Mhm.
anybody, but I get greater feedback from the emotional response of getting a plan well made than what they pay me. They do pay me, but my feel good, my validation, my affirmation comes from the lives I'm able to change. I say to people, I don't take myself very seriously, but I do life changing work. So
Mm.
I'll just throw that out there.
Yeah. Yeah. It seems like you're very aligned with what you're doing. That's beautiful.
Finally,
Yeah.
finally. And we're
Congratulations.
not even going to talk about how that goes up against all of my churchification and,
Oh,
all of the programming
sure.
about wealth and money and all of that that I had to overcome.
Yeah.
But in finding that, in being brave enough to go into those dark places for myself, that alignment that I now experience is so worth it. So,
Mm.
so worth it.
That's huge. Yeah. That sounds like a lot to work through. Hmm.
Yes.
You mentioned that your parents, the foundation that they provided for you and your siblings, was pretty influential. But who or what was a big influence on you growing up, or in your career now?
One of the things, I mean, I could tell you about my really like teenage crush on Oprah.
Oh,
Um, I like to say that I don't actually want to meet Oprah. I want to meet Miss Winfrey, um,
uh,
because to me, the way that she has curated her life is phenomenal. I love the public persona. That's Oprah, but I need to get to the nuts and bolts, the belly of her thinking, her strategy, her tenacity.
mm.
Yeah, I'm crushing hard on Miss Winfrey.
Hmm.
Um, and I like to pull a little bit from a lot of different places. I've seen phenomenal women outside of my parents who, in various ways, influence me. I like to take a little bit from a lot of places and build that base of inspiration, that I can grow with. I'm crushing on Rachel Rogers as well, who's
Mm.
doing some phenomenal things in the space currently, especially as it regards women and wealth. I'm loving both of the Obamas. Let me tell you, I read Miss Michelle Obama's book about becoming, and I love that perspective. I love seeing and hearing that, yeah, they look great on the outside. They struggled same way. The
Mm.
challenges are there same way. And it kind of helped me appreciate that everybody that I'm crushing on have had challenges. They might be different from mine, but at the root of it, the challenges remain. So I kind of said, okay, bring it on, challenge, because I got places to be. Um, which sometimes you regret the invitation, but you
Right.
know what? I'm open to that. So I'm
Mhm.
inspired by many people. It might be one thing they did or one thing they said. Michael Beckwith has a quote that I like to share, and he says, "Pain pushes until vision pulls."
Mm.
And I appreciate that adjustment in perspective. I can be pushed by force out of pain and trauma, or I can choose to build a vision so powerful, so strong, and so desirable that it effortlessly just takes me to it, kind of like the escalator versus the stairs.
Mm. I like that.
Yes. Yeah.
Yeah. Oh, wow. I'll be thinking about that for a while. Thanks for
No
sharing
worries. You can
that.
percolate. I don't mind.
I
I
love
love
that.
when I do that and I can leave
Yeah.
someone thinking about something
Mhm.
for themselves. So my pleasure. You're welcome.
Thank you. And thank you for joining me today. I always end up having more questions than time for, and also think of more questions later. So, but I appreciate hearing your story and everything that you had to share today. Is there anything that you think that we missed, or that you would like to share so that we can find you later? We'll put it in our show notes, or anyone else that you would like to highlight. Any of that.
Yeah, well, you know what? If anyone is listening, and I know I work predominantly with women, but anyone who's listening and there's a disconnect between what you say and what you want to achieve and what you're doing and the results you're getting from it, stop suffering on your own and stop labeling yourself all of those negative things. Get support. You can reach out to me across any of your favorite social or digital channels. Look up Money Navigator. I'm there. And know that I've probably been where you are and I can offer you judgment free support. Having said that, I'm on a mission, and I'm on a mission to help women create wealth because I believe when women have access to wealth, not only do they change their world, they get to change the world. And I'm there for that. So I'd love to help if I can. It will be my absolute pleasure to help create the change that I want to see through all the women that I get to help.
That's wonderful. Absolutely. And you mentioned you have two kids. Is that right? This just popped into my head.
Yes, I've
Uh,
got two daughters.
two daughters. So I imagine the work that you're doing will leave a very lasting impression on them as well. Being able to
Yes.
grow up with that kind of influence. That's
That's the
wonderful.
hope. That's the
Mm-hmm.
hope. That's all I can do is what I can do, right? That's
Mm-hmm.
all we can do, and we leave to them to make choices for themselves that have hopefully been positively influenced by what we've been able to expose them to. So fingers crossed, toes crossed.
Yeah.
Woo.
Yeah, absolutely.
Yes.
Well, Hadriana, thank you so much for joining me again. I appreciate being able to connect with you today.
Thank you, Allison.
Thank you for joining us for Take Notice Amplifying Black Stories. Please subscribe and follow us on social media. We are at Take Notice Podcast. It would really help us out if you could take a couple of minutes to review our podcast. You can do so through your podcast app or by visiting our website. It's takenoticepodcast.org. Thank you for your support. Take Notice Amplifying Black Stories is produced, hosted, and edited by Allison Preisinger-Heggins with help from many. Music by Version Big 5 featuring Darius Heggins. Thank you for being with us, and thank you for taking notice.
With all of the smiles in their